Hello and welcome back once again to Rage Gaming and more Baldurs Gate 3. With patch 7 arriving soon, we know that we're getting some new cinematics for not just your Dark Urge playthroughs, but also evil endings in general. With that, I've had my eyes back on the game again, and I really wanted to focus on some of the Dark Urge stuff as a cool topic. Today I'm talking about various interesting or useful things to know going into a Dark Urge playthrough, if you're doing so with patch 7, but there was also some new stuff added in patch 6 as well. So let's get started. First up, if you're thinking about trying a Dark Urge for the first time finally, maybe because you've just not been into the horrors of a darker playthrough, the first thing I want to highlight in this video is how you don't have to do that. You can still play Dark Urge because there's two sides to it. There's the classic, leaning into the evil stuff, letting the urges do their thing, or instead you can resist it, which is a really fun way to approach it. It does make for a very unique playthrough, much like doing your first evil one. Though of course with the new evil ending cinematics, you might specifically want to do that with patch 7. And while there are some interesting perks to the Dark Urge and leading into that, resisting it can also be very cool and unique for the story. It's my understanding that there's only one character that kind of has to die in this playthrough. There's a named character that's extremely likely to fall through Dark Urges, but it is actually possible to avoid even that one. So minor spoilers about that coming up on this next point. Out of all of your urge moments, there's one that can kind of just sort of happen to you, and that's Alfira, who seeks your help and asks to stay in the camp as a Dark Urge. I remember when that first happened to me, I was wondering if I'd missed this in all my various Act 1 character runs, but yeah, it happens to the Durge specifically. Of course, you wake up to find out you've done some rather terrible things, and now she's not exactly functional anymore. The thing is, she can be saved. You just kind of replace her with someone else. If you choose to knock her unconscious before resting the night where she stays with you, it can actually save her. Non-lethal attacks can be found under the passive tab. You can turn this on and off at will, so while it's on, if you attack someone, you will simply knock them out rather than killing them. So you intentionally knock her out right before triggering the arrival at camp. When you do that, we instead have a guy called Quill Grootslang appear, which takes her place. My best understanding of this then is to intentionally save a lot during Act 1. So when she finally shows up, you can go back to the save just before that, go to her normal location where she's singing and hanging out, and knock her unconscious. While she's knocked out, go to camp, rest, the events not involving her will occur, and now as of like 5 months back, because I think it was included in a post update, maybe one of the main patches, Alfira will actually acknowledge you doing that, which is another really cool thing. You get a letter from her talking about it later in the game, and it reads as follows. I've lost count of how many times I've started this letter, so I'm just gonna get straight to it. I heard what you are, and now what you've overcome. I saw murder in your eyes when you looked at me, but you stayed your hand, didn't you? I'm not gonna tell you where I am for obvious reasons, but I'm safe, and I'm happy, and I'm not wasting a second of the life that you spared. Thank you, with love and forgiveness, Alfira. Really cool stuff. Again, this is the character that was supposedly the Bard origin character that never happened, and that's something I want to talk about in the future. But really cool details that you'll only experience, one in a Dirge playthrough, and two in playing it in a very specific, careful way. So the Dark Urge is just a really cool origin character. Now, if you're actually doing a normal playthrough, whether that's evil or not, you can still find the Dirge. He's actually in your non-Dirge games. However, hilariously, he's dead. You will find him where it makes the most sense, the Bal Temple with Orin and Co in Act 3. In Orin's chambers post Orin fight, you will find a lot of big lore details. In here are a few dead bodies, but one in particular is this white dragonborn that's laying in the center of a Dark Urge kill marking. This white dragonborn just so happens to look just like the Durge, the origin character, so this calls into question, why? Why is the Dark Urge dead in a normal playthrough, and specifically here? Well, interestingly, if you examine the corpse, you can see that he actually has non-lethal attacks activated. I would speculate that this is Larian's rather subtle way to suggest that this Dark Urge spent his time fighting the urges all the way to his end. It could be the case that Orin killed him, or it could be that this Dirge ended himself rather than fall to these urges. I like to imagine then that this non-player version of the Dirge was resisting his urges, and it just didn't succeed. But yeah, what do you think? Why is he dead? Either way, pretty cool detail that he is technically in your normal games. Next, did you know that there's kind of a secret nightmare scene for the Dark Urge? Tied to your past with various answers and details revealed. Specifically your race and class that you're currently playing as the Dirge. So if you're a Dragonborn and maybe Sorcerer, you will get things tied to specifically that. The reason it's relatively secret is that you need to sleep before any relevant progress after the prologue is actually complete. Any other events tied to the story, of which there's a load in the early game, will push you past the point where you can see this nightmare scene. So The most reliable way to experience it is to simply long rest right from the beginning, when you first begin walking around on the beach post ship crash. You don't even have to properly long rest, it could just be a partial rest, so there's no cost to doing it. Here's how it works though. You'll have a nightmare about who you are and what you were, what these violent yearnings mean. First, you'll think about your heritage, that's the race check. So if you're a Dragonborn, you'll get the ancestral knowledge of your dragon clan is diluted amid a liquid hate in your blood. This is then followed by a contemplation of your craft, aka your class. So if you're a sorcerer, it'll say you are fortunate your sorceries come from instinct rather than your mangled head. From there, the next 3 checks will be more universal, whatever you pick, tied to probing your mind for thoughts, how you must be death yourself, and the final answer, that you were once something awful. The context of why you can have different answers based on your race and class is probably because you can create your own Dark Urge. You don't have to be the origin version. So whatever race you pick, you're out of place, that's for sure. And for class, there's different funny lines based on what goes against or with the idea of a dirge. So for bard or monk or paladin with your oath, it's a bit awkward. Monks, for example, is for a monk, you do hyperventilate an awful lot. So if you do try a dirge, I would recommend you intentionally long rest right from the beginning on the beach, just to see what lines are for you with your choices. Moving on, there's this big topic of the Dark Urge and its lost memories. It's one that I never really delved into because I've never properly finished a dirge playthrough. About a month ago, there was a great discussion about this on Reddit. How did you lose your memories? How did this origin begin? The post came from a user who completed a dirge playthrough, but as a resistor, I wanted to clarify these things that he never saw. So again, spoilers inbound. As stated by the post, we were slain and then tadpoled by Orin herself. Question is, why do we lose our memories? The top post response on that discussion by someone called Sir Cellophane explained it like this. You weren't actually tadpoled in the same way as the rest of the origin characters and Tav, because you weren't kidnapped in the same way. Before any of that happened, we were lured out by Orin into an ambush as the old version of the dirge. She attacked us from behind, stabbing a hole in your head. Since Orin was tied to the Absolute and the whole tadpoling plan, she was able to choose to tadpole you, basically forcing one in there manually. Eventually though, you're used by a Merkel cultist as a somewhat mindless pet. Now you've been kind of lobotomized, but in time, you begin to recover function and awareness. Before that can really take full root though, you end up shipped off with other tadpoled slaves, ending up in the same place as the other origins. To me, this theory is interesting and fun to think about since I never had the chance to learn it myself, but I want to ask you guys, how accurate or true do you feel this is? For me, this theory is interesting, but it's like, how did we end up on that ship exactly? Feels like the explanation here is missing a few things. Last up, just a fun thing you might not have known about since it was added in patch 6. Very casually referenced in the notes was how there's new narrator lines for the Dark Urge when interacting with Gortash in his office in Act 3. What this actually means is that there's some interesting insight checks around going with him or against him in regards to the Foundry and his plan. For this footage, credit to the Dark Urge Diaries on YouTube. Firstly, if you go against him and destroy his Foundry, he comments on how he valued your alliance until this betrayal. You can choose to tell him that for what it's worth, you always liked him, but this is how it is. And then there's this new hesitation from Gortash, where he looks at you as if remembering all the past times you had together. And right as he's about to say something important, he's interrupted by the brain breaking free. On the other version, if we actually ally with him and then defeat Orin as agreed, he's thrilled. Now we have 2 Netherstones, he's going to ask for them. Here we can see his true intentions. He fully expects you to reject this. He knows you're strong and what you actually are, but just wants to see your reaction. A further insight shows how he's actually really missed interacting with you. When you tell him that you're going to keep the Netherstones no matter what he says, that you're going to form an alliance with him, only one way you have 2 and he has 1, he does something pretty cool. He laughs and says, as they should. This should be an alliance of peers. He suggests that you have the makings of a leader and should be one, and that Bane has blessed this alliance. Just fantastic. Compared to Orin and Ketheric, Gortash has so much less in Act 3, but clearly gets more if you're playing the Dirge. Obviously, he has a history with your former self and respects you and your power. He's thrilled to have you representing Bal instead of the very unreliable Orin, seemingly viewing you as a worthy ally that he can trust, which is pretty separate from this character normally. He seems to really believe that you controlling 2 Netherstones alongside his 1, the pair of you can take back control of the brain and the situation and continue the plans. There's even theories that the Dirge and Gortash had some kind of relationship, some sort of intimate history. I could believe that, but it's all very cool. It just makes me wonder if they're going to do anything else with this in maybe patch 7 or something. But yeah, there you have it. Some of the cooler and more interesting things you can do or consider for the Dark Urge. I hope this was the right amount of detail without being too spoilery. It is obviously tough, but we're talking about the Dark Urge. If you guys have anything you'd like to add to this topic though, be sure to drop it in the comments. For now, I've been Hollow, you've been you, Thanks for watching.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.